Hello, and welcome to the Powder Room, where we discover the message within our messes. I am your host, Ivy Ashley. In today's episode titled Your Balance Blueprint, we'll explore the interconnected nature of physical, emotional, financial, mental, spiritual, and relational balance. In this two-part season finale, we're inviting you to pause, reflect, and realign. And I know that was a whole lot in the introduction, and you are wondering, how am I going to talk about all of that? But trust me, we are going to get into it. I can't believe that this is the last two episodes of the Powder Room podcast for this season. It has been an amazing ride, and I am so glad that you guys have been on this journey with me. Now, speaking of balance, so at the end of every year, we're making all these resolutions, we're making all of these plans of what we want to do. In the new year, we have these phrases, and we're all excited about meeting our goals. But I think even more importantly, when we're into that new year and at the midway point, this is an awesome time for us to take inventory and assess where we are with the goals that we said that we were going to meet this year. So, how are you doing with those resolutions? How are you doing with those goals that you have set? How are you doing with that weight loss? It is now time to assess where we are in meeting those things that we said that we were going to meet. With that said, if you find yourself nowhere close to where you thought that you would be at this time of the year, it is a possibility that the reason is because you find that your life in some area is out of balance. And so that is what we're going to focus these last 2 years, these last two episodes of this season. And as we get into this conversation, you will see that there is so much involved in maintaining balance in your life that you don't really have time to be trying to manage what other folk are doing in their own lives. Let's just be real. So, what is balance? I believe, and you already know, sister got a little definition. Having balance in life means creating an inner sense of peace and calm in the midst of chaos. That means all this craziness can be going on around you, but somehow you are able to maintain an inner sense of peace because you created a life of balance. And I believe that balance consists of three elements, and those elements are alignment, wholeness, and awareness. And what we find is that this is an ever evolving process and it's unique to each individual. Even if you're married, each individual person in the marriage has to maintain their own balance. So let's look at it this way. We've all driven some type of vehicle before, whether it be a car or a truck or a SUV, whatever it is. And some of us may know what it feels like when that vehicle is unbalanced or not in alignment, what happens? The vehicle may pull to one side, it may have uneven tire wear, you may feel your wheel vibrating when you increase speed. And the crazy thing is, if you don't pay attention to those signs at the very beginning or at the onset, the longer you wait to address the unalignment in your car, it can lead to more catastrophic issues and cost you hundreds, even thousands of dollars if it's not fixed in time. And I think we have to look at our lives in the exact same manner. If any part of your life is out of balance and you continue to live as though, it doesn't matter or it's not important, you may eventually find that that one area that you refuse to get control of will cause other areas of your life to be out of balance. So it's like you can't be doing, oh, I'm doing well in 4 areas. So, them other 2 areas, they'll be okay. Absolutely not. We have to maintain balance in every area of our lives so that any mishaps in other areas don't have a negative impact. Now I know that was a lot. I'm coming in kind of strong already, but I believe that this is so important and I found it valuable in my own life. And so let's get into the specifics of finding balance. I believe a good place for us to start is by discussing the 6 pillars of balance. And so we're going to spend some time today identifying and defining these pillars. And then next week, we'll focus on getting those areas to be balanced. Okay. So the first area is physical balance. And so, what are some signs that you're off from a physical standpoint? You may experience some fatigue, you neglect self care, you have poor eating habits, poor sleeping habits, poor exercise habits. You may not take medication consistently. If you are of a certain age and you have, vitamin deficiencies, you may not take your vitamins like you need to, not going to the doctor consistently as you should, not getting annual checkups like manual mammograms, pap smears, um, colonoscopies, all these things that, are done on a routine basis in order to make sure that nothing catastrophic is going on in our bodies. And if something is, if identified early, it is able to be addressed timely. So those are some signs that you may be off from a physical standpoint. And I believe with my whole heart that some of the illnesses we have are a direct result of poor physical balance. And I will tell on myself because I have highlighted in red in my notes the areas that I have identified that I fall short in. And this is one of those areas for me. I recently had a checkup with my GYN and she was looking over some of my numbers and she said, "You know what? I want to check your A1C because, it was borderline like pre-diabetic the last time it was checked, I believe in September, and I want to see where you are." Now, my A1C don't have anything to do with my gynecological areas, But when you have a good physician, they are concerned with your total health and not just the area that they specialize in. And that's a word for somebody. So when she sent me to get a blood test and the results came back, um, I am 0.1% from a diabetes diagnosis. And when I received those results, it kind of sent shockwaves through me. Now I know that, my eating habits are not consistently great. I eat good sometimes and I eat bad sometimes, but there is definitely out of balance. And I have, become more active over the past several months because I'm now playing pickleball. But even if you're active, if you don't eat good, then that negates any activity, you can be doing. And so when she told me that, she was like, okay, Ivy, we got to get on top of this. And she, gave me a referral to join this program that assists with, meal planning and just overall assistance with this area. And I am so grateful, again, for a physician that cares about my total health. But diabetes, I'm going to be honest, it terrifies me because my dad and my grandmother suffered with it, and I want absolutely no parts of it because it is eventually how both of them pass because of complications. So I've seen, for myself what it does, to the people you love and what it does to their bodies, and I don't want to go through it. So our bodies will always give us warning signs when things are out of whack, but we cannot ignore those warning signs. So if you have been having headaches consistently and you are over 40, listen, it's not just a headache. You could be dealing with blood pressure. And I know, saints of God, you just want to pray about it, and prayer is good. Prayer is amazing. However, prayer and going to the doctor can work together. So just because you going to the doctor doesn't negate your prayer. It gives you the words and the focus of how you can direct your prayers once you have been informed. So yes, please, let's go to the doctor and let's take better care of our bodies, because if physically we are out of balance, it will definitely impact the other areas of our lives. In addition to that, let's talk about getting ample rest. And I know I don't always get the amount of rest that I need as well. And I was looking on sleep.com, and they recommend that adults to age 65 get 7 to 9 hours of sleep a night. Now, how many of you are consistently getting that many hours of sleep? I can already tell you I am not. I am not getting that much rest. And I already know if I don't sleep properly, I am not going to be any good to function the next day. And I have one of those type of jobs that requires my mind to be sharp. And so if I don't have sleep, I am not going to be worth two pennies on those people's job. So I really need to tighten up in this area as well. And I know I am not the only one. Okay. So physical balance, super important. And just a reminder, please listen to your body's whispers. before they turn into screams. Physical balance. The next one is a 2-for-1 because I really feel like they coexist really. Emotional and mental balance. So, emotional, how we feel, and mental, how we think. What are some signs that your emotions are off? Emotional numbness, avoidance. What are some signs that your mental or your thinking is out of balance? Racing thoughts, possible burnout, you have trouble focusing. And I believe those are some very good indications that you can be a little off kilter in these areas. Now, I believe that it is healthy to be able to experience or express our emotions. So I do encourage naming your emotions and experiencing your emotions without shame. Emotions are data, not weakness. Okay. Again, emotions are data, they are not weaknesses. The key, however, is to not be overcome or ruled by our emotions because they are not always reliable. And you know that for a fact, ladies, because when we make emotional decisions, they are made without consideration of any facts. Because when your thoughts are so consumed by how you feel, it does not allow you to see truth because all you can think about is how you feel in that moment. So it's okay to be able to express our feelings. And just because we express our feelings and are confident in them and may even sometimes be confident in our expression, that does not mean that we are this angry Black woman because we are confident. I don't know why, especially other cultures, interpret our confidence and our passion as aggressive or as angry. But guess what? That is their problem, not ours. And so it should not make us shrink ourselves to make them comfortable. We are who we are, and it is okay. The important thing about emotions and our minds is we have to protect it at all cost. And in order for us to protect it, that means we have to create boundaries. We have to create boundaries around what we consume. We have to create boundaries around who we're exposed to. We have to create boundaries around who we allow to experience us. So, what that means is we may have to minimize social media, news, and certain people in our lives because sometimes people can be so freaking negative. It's like they never see anything positive, everything is bad, everything is negative, and those type of people irk me. I could not find a better word. They seriously irk me. And I know it's probably time, and maybe I will do that, after I finish recording this final episode is take some time away from social media, as far as like scrolling, because sometimes you can scroll across the wrong thing and it just does something to your spirit. And I don't know about you, but in these days and times, I cannot afford anything or anybody to infiltrate my spirit, because it's enough for me to try to keep it right. So you and sometimes I don't even watch the news, because if you live in a city like mine, the first 10, 12 minutes, especially on a weekend, is going to be who shot who died, who got stabbed, who got robbed. I mean, it's like, oh my God, can it stop already? Also, minimizing our exposure to toxic people. Sometimes, I've learned that, all friends are not friends for a lifetime. There are friends for reason, seasons, and lifetime. And we run into issues when folk that are supposed to be in our lives for a specific reason, we try to make them lifetime, connections, and it does not work. And that's when they start causing problems, because you should have let them go when your assignment was done, but you wanted to keep them around to foster a need that you had in your own life. But I'm telling you, you can't afford to have people in your life who are not supposed to be there, because toxic folk will drain you. They will suck the very life out of you. And you talking about having your emotions and your mind, your mental out of balance. Don't allow their dysfunction to be your emergency. Let me say that again. Don't allow their dysfunction to be your emergency. If it's a problem at 2 a.m., it's still going to be relevant 6 hours later, when it's a more appropriate time for us to have a conversation. Unless somebody is, on the way to the hospital dying. That's the only exception. And I'm going to tell you right now, do not disturb is a gift. My phone going go on do not disturb at 10:30, 11 o'clock every night, and it does not come off until 7 or 8 the next morning. I do have it set for certain people, to be able to call me or bypass do not disturb. But sometimes I take those people off the list, because again, your dysfunction is not my emergency. And you not calling me 11:30 midnight just to chat. No, ma'am. Because see, I'm one of those people. First of all, it takes me a minute to fall asleep, unless, I've just had a tiring day, and, I fall asleep within a few minutes from hitting the pillow. That doesn't happen to me often. Even if I work out, it still takes me a few minutes to fall asleep. And I'm talking about 30 minutes to an hour. So once I get to sleep, I don't sleep heavy. So a phone ringing, a text coming through is going to wake me up out of my sleep. And sometimes it takes me a minute to go back. So again, do not disturb is a gift, and it is okay to use it. And don't let anybody make you feel guilty by how you use your phone. How does that work? This is my phone. I manage how I use it. All right. So that's emotional and mental balance. The next area, or the next pillar of balance, is spiritual balance. And this is, extremely important to me as well. And I've already made it perfectly clear that, I believe in Jesus over here. So, you know, if you are, you believing in nature or an inanimate object, or you burning sage, rubbing crystals, or chanting, okay, that's good for you. But as for me and my house, we serve the Lord over here. So I'm going to be coming from that particular perspective. But however you define spiritual balance, please, incorporate that, for yourself. So how do you determine that your spiritual balance is off? Lack of peace, there's an emptiness, feelings of uncertainty, shaky belief system. And for me personally, I feel like I am out of control. And that is because I am out of control and I have tried to take things into my own hands and not rely on God like I'm supposed to. So I can always tell when I'm not spiritually balanced because I don't feel as close to God as I should. And why don't I feel as close to God as I should? Because my prayer life is off. I'm not reading the word like I'm supposed to. I'm not making that connection with him in worship and praise outside of the four walls of the church. And going to church is awesome, not forsaking yourselves with believers and going to, a house um on a weekly basis. That's amazing. But if that's all you're doing, you're going to be spiritually unbalanced. I'm just here to tell you. Just imagine what happens in any other relationship you have if you only fostered it once a week or twice a week. Would it last? Absolutely not. So we cannot negate the fact that in order for us to maintain spiritual balance, it needs as much or even more commitment and effort as we would give a physical relationship with a person. So I already know anytime I'm feeling not close to God, I know exactly what I need to do in order for me to feel connected to Him. I know exactly what I need to do. So that's spiritual balance. Then the last one I'm going to talk about today is financial balance. So, signs that you may be off financially: overspending, financial anxiety, avoidance of money matters, low credit score, no financial planning, lending money to people who don't have the ability to pay you back. Let me tell you a secret. You just made a donation, honey. You are not allowing someone who can't pay you back borrow. You have just made a donation. So these are some signs that you may be off financially. So with this, I believe that we have to analyze the state of our finances and ask ourselves the hard questions if we want to get this area back in alignment. So, one question I have for you to consider is, where did your thoughts about money originate from, and how do those thoughts impact how you see money today? So, for instance, if you grew up, extremely poor, you may have the idea that anytime you get money, you hoard it. So you don't want to invest, you just put it in the bank. Just feel like, it's such a hot commodity that, because it's something that I've never had before, or I've had very little of, you may see or find that the value of money is more important than someone who is a hedge fund kid who's always, had access to a lot of money. And that there's not anything necessarily wrong with that, but we want to make sure that we see money from a healthy standpoint. So we have to normalize financial healing, regardless of what your history may be, because it's never too late to build again. I mean, at this age and stage of life, people in their 30s, 40s, and 50s, and may have experienced things like divorce or being widowed, changing jobs, losing jobs, things of that sort. So something may have happened in your life to where you didn't picture yourself being in this financial position at this point because you had everything planned out, and one, you know, large event in your life happened and it just threw your plans, completely out of whack. And for whatever reason, you find yourself having to pick up the pieces and start over again. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And people do it every day, have to start over. But if you have to start over, make sure you have the right information, the right resources so that you don't make the same mistake twice. I think we've done more, over the past 20 years, but we really need to make sure that we focus and teach our children more about money, about credit, about real estate, about investments, about financial planning. These are things that unfortunately I wasn't taught in my household. I learned how to balance a checkbook in high school taking a business class. I learned some things about money taking a course in accounting and economics in college, not because it's something that I was taught in my home. And we really need to become more intentional, making sure that our kids have a healthy relationship with money and not carry this entitlement spirit that so many of the kids in this day and time have. As quiet as it's kept, you have to work for what you have. I know that's a novel idea, but nobody who gets money legally, nothing is given to us. We have to work for every single thing that we have. Also, I'm sure some of us have experienced how stress surrounding money can impact how you feel about yourself, and it can impact your relationships, especially marriages. I believe money is still one of the leading causes of divorce. So this is a very, 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 very important area for us to ensure that we find a balance in. So, based on what we've discussed today, I want you to identify which pillar feels strongest for you right now and which one do you feel needs more attention. So, just to reflect, we talked about physical, emotional, mental, spiritual, and financial balance. So, which one of those areas do you feel the strongest in, and which one do you feel needs attention? I always want to hear from you. So please, I encourage you to share your experiences on social media or email. You can reach me on Facebook at the Powder Room Podcast. On Instagram, I have a page called the Powder Room.pod, or you can email me at consultiva@gmail.com. And don't forget to join me next week where we will have our final episode of the season. And we'll have part 2 of your balance blueprint, where we'll dive into the last pillar. And we'll also get into what throws us off balance and how to recalibrate. Thank you again for joining me in the Powder Room. I am your host, Ivy Ashley, and remember, we always discover the message within our messes. Take care.